Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. So I'll admit, I often forget that Lomography still offers 3 color film options for sale. And recently I started to wonder, have I been taking these for granted? So in this video, I'm loading up some Lomo 100, a film I've never shot with, heading out to a car show here in England to shoot a few rolls, and I'm going to share the results, my thoughts, and just talk about how this film performed and if I think it's a decent option worth investing in. So the Lomo color films in particular are quite interesting. You know, there's a little bit of mystery behind these, with people often trying to figure out what they actually are. And when I was doing research for this video, I came across a lot of opinions online. You know, there's all these different forum threads about it. Some people convinced that the 100 speed is actually Kodak Pro image, but in 120 format, I guess. People guessing that it's gold, color plus. But essentially all of this is just speculation, and I don't know if we'll actually ever know the truth. And for a while, you know, the Lomography films were more of like a budget option on the market, but nowadays, obviously film prices are all over the place depending on where you live. But here in England, this Lomo 100 worked out to about £10 a roll. Obviously I bought a 3-pack, and in comparison, I can get a Pro pack of gold in 120 for £45, so a little less than £10 a roll. And depending on where you look, you can get Portra 160 for £50, so the exact same price. So this film here in England is no longer a budget option, but there still is intrigue for me to shoot something like this just because it is another option for a different look. So in the past, I shot one roll of Lomo's Color Negative 835mm on a half-frame camera and actually was really surprised by how nice that film looked. And then I shot one roll of 400 in 120 for an exposure test and was impressed with how well that film held up and how flexible it was. So I did actually have quite high hopes for this 100 speed film. Like I said, shot a few rolls recently at a car show. We're gonna jump into that footage now, take a look at those images, talk about them a little bit, and then afterwards, we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive on the computer and take a look at a few things a bit closer. So I brought out 2 cameras for the day, the Pentax 645 with the 75mm and Pentax 67 with the 105 2.4. When it comes to color, I was expecting Lomo 100 to have a pretty strong look, just apparently being a consumer film, and some of the examples you see online, there's strong color casts and kind of strange colors. And while it definitely does have a bit of a look, it was nowhere near as heavy as I thought it was going to be. I found as well, after just like a few simple tweaks, the colors actually balanced out quite well. And overall, I'd say that I really enjoy the palette and look of this film stock. When it comes to grain, it was stronger than I thought it would be for a 100 speed film. But that being said, I'm definitely a fan of a little bit of grain and was quite happy with how it looked in these images. Sharpness was great, kind of to be expected, and also just keeping in mind that the majority of these images were shot wide open. For metering, I used the internal meters in the Pentaxes for all of these images, double checked against a handheld meter a few times, and I set the ISO on both cameras to 80 just to be a little bit safe. And the film did great considering it was a contrasty day out, seemed to have lots of latitude. The one thing I did notice was quite a sharp drop off into the deep shadow areas, which is actually a look that I enjoy, but that was kind of consistent across the images. But overall, the film seemed to hold up well, and I definitely like it more than I thought I was going to. So yeah, gotta say, impressed with those results. I didn't expect this film to look so good. And like I said, we'll hop on the computer, do a little bit of a deeper dive. I want to show you the conversion process and just how these scanned and how kind of easy they were to get to the point that we saw them here on screen. But before we do that, just really quickly, got to take a second to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. So as a photographer, a website is an incredibly rewarding and valuable tool to have. And Squarespace is a really great option if you need to build one. And what I love about the platform is that they have a really wide range of nice, clean, professional looking templates to choose from. And they're also so incredibly easy to use. For example, if you're building a gallery out, you can just click and drag to reorder and rearrange images. And you can easily build things like an online shop if you want to sell prints or photo books and things like that. So check out squarespace.com today to sign up for a free trial and test things out. And when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below, which is squarespace.com/Kyle McDougall to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, we're gonna hop on the computer now. All of this film was scanned using my GFX 50R setup and converted using Negative Lab Pro in Lightroom. And we're gonna start by taking a look at the conversion process. Okay, and the reason I wanna show you this conversion process is just because I find whenever you're looking at color negative film reviews online, almost every single review will give you a different look from, say, the same film, just because there's so much variance when we're talking about color negative film. So I will show you how these kind of converted and what I had to do them. And there is this trend that kind of carries through them. So this is the edited version. This is Negative Lab Pro, just making all the tweaks in here. But if I reset this, this is how the image initially converted with kind of the automatic settings, auto white balance and stuff. So there is this like bluish purple cast to like the midtones and the highlights. And if we cancel that out, let me go to this one and do the same thing. You'll see it's not as strong here, but the exact same thing kind of carries through to almost all of these negatives. So that was interesting to see, is like there is this look that all of these had, this like cooler magenta kind of purple look to them. We'll do one more here. So same thing, and it obviously varies between images. But the thing that was cool, if we go back to this one, is that it was really easy to correct out on all of these. So in the past, when I've worked with Ektar, which is a film I struggle with, I have found I always end up with these color casts, especially in the shadows, that can be really difficult to get out. But with this Lomo 100, all that I ended up doing is adjusting the temp, say warming it up a bit, and adjusting the tint. When it comes to color balance, obviously brightness adjustments after that. But you can see it cleans up really easily. And same thing, we'll go to this one, reset it. So just warming it up and then adjusting the tint a bit. And obviously I'm doing this really quick, but I just wanted to show you this so you can get an idea for how easy this film seems to correct, or at least how it did for me. So that was nice to see. And it was actually like quite an enjoyable process to convert all of this film. I wasn't like going and digging into shadows and highlights and all these different sliders, just like simple temp and tint adjustments. And then the second thing I wanted to look at is just talking about exposure. So as mentioned, I was using the internal meters in the Pentax cameras. They were pretty accurate for the most part, and the exposures were pretty consistent. But if there was one critique when it comes to how this film handled exposure and contrast, is just like in some scenarios where there were these really like bright highlight areas, say like this chrome window trim here on the car. Obviously this is an extreme kind of highlight area and you would expect it to be blown out or maybe not hold detail. But I found that with this lomography film, those areas seem to go really quickly. It's like almost as soon as they were going to start clipping, they were gone. And this isn't like a huge deal because obviously in an image like this, I don't care about like the backlit chrome window trim on something like this. But I did want to point that out because it was one thing that I noticed. Some of these specular highlights and stuff, you can just see that the detail is pretty much gone right away. So this is like a very, very minor critique about how the film dealt with exposure and contrast. But on the flip side, like overall, I will say that it held up quite well. There were a couple scenes like this one here where it's this bright sunlit white wall and obviously the shadow areas and there's still like pretty good detail throughout the image. The shadow areas maybe seem to fall off quick as well. But if we go to this image, you can see this is a TIFF that I exported, and you still can there's still room to work with these scans if you want to say pull out some more detail in the shadow areas and pull down the highlights. So that was neat to see, because just thinking that, this is maybe a consumer film, you expect it to maybe be a little temperamental and not have much room for flexibility, but not as good as a professional Portra 400, but for the most part, yeah, held up very, very well and gives you still some room for flexibility. So to wrap this up, very happy with how this looked. I would say it's probably my favorite slower speed color negative film that I've shot with. Obviously, the options are very limited nowadays. A couple critiques though. The first one, and this isn't a huge critique, but more so, I just wish that this was still a budget option. It'd be cool to be able to save a couple dollars using the Lomo stocks compared to the Kodak offerings, but yeah, I guess it is what it is. As you all know, film pricing is all over the place nowadays and things are fluctuating all the time. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think it would stop me from shooting this just because I really do enjoy how it looks. Second critique though, is just going back to that mystery of wondering what this actually is. And with that, for me, comes a little bit of a worry of just wondering if this is always gonna be the same emulsion, how long is it gonna be around for, how old is it, where's it being made, and things like that. Whereas with say a Portra, there's this confidence, reliability that comes with it, knowing what it is and knowing that it's probably gonna be around for a long time. So anyways, I think I'll still definitely shoot some of this in the future. If you have before, I'd love to hear your experience. If you haven't, maybe this inspires you to try some out. Other than that though, just want to say, as always, thank you for watching. I'm gonna go now. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you soon.